Hey, listeners, and welcome to the You Are Epic podcast. This is where we honour the people who've helped build not just our industry, but our communities. I'm Angela Hucker, and I am so glad that you're here. So, I'm taking the time to sit down with people who've been in construction for years, people who've been through the ups, the downs, and everything in between. You're going to hear real stories of resilience, growth, and moments that shaped who they are. This podcast is for those that want to learn more from people who've been walking this path for some time, and they're helping to lift up others and quietly making a difference along the way. It's also to show you that your journey matters and your voice matters. And in case you've forgotten, you are epic. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Leon Cantor, a global events leader and co-founder of Future Place, Australia's leading platform for technology, sustainability, and capital investment in real estate and construction. With nearly 30 years experience producing world-class summits across 30 different countries, Leon is the driving force behind landmark events like the Future of Construction Summit. As a father of two daughters, he's passionate about increasing diversity and connecting innovators with industry leaders to solve the built environment's biggest challenges. And he does it with vision, energy, and a global perspective shaped by 2 decades abroad. So thank you so much for joining us, Leon. It's awesome to have you here.
Thank you, Angela. Delighted to be here. It's an honor.
And one thing I always love to start with any of our guests is to find out how did you get started in the events management space and then end up, doing events management in the for construction in the built environment.
Sure. Well, look, like many people like me who have been in this industry for so long, it wasn't a career 30 years ago. I mean, there were people doing it, but we all fell into it. And I had a girlfriend at the time and a friend. He was working in events. She had just done an events management degree, and he helped her get a job. And then listening to them talk on the weekend about their role and what they were doing, the challenges they were facing, I really became fascinated with the conference and events industry, and then eventually made my way into it as well. And so that was at the end of the 90s, and we've seen so much change. And delighted to be, I guess, one of the pioneers of conferences and events that we have today that were really nothing like that at the end of the 90s. They were much smaller, very little networking and so on. And then was through COVID when I found myself after having made a career in events, or just prior to, pardon me, in terms of construction, I got my teeth cut when I did my home renovation. So we were fortunate enough to have a house, turned a three-bedroom semi into a five-bedroom,
Wow.
three-bathroom. And so getting involved from, the design stage through the build, meeting all the different subbies and what they were doing and the different contractors involved in building a house, be it a simple build in terms
Mm.
of the scale of some of the mega projects that we focused on at Future of Construction or FCON. It was a really interesting insight into the industry, and I loved it. But then a couple of years later, COVID hit, and
Mm.
sadly, I had to sell that house because when you're doing events and everyone's in lockdown, I really didn't think or know what was around the corner. So I sold my house, paid off my debts, bought a little apartment that we still live in today, and basically talking to another friend, the one who helped me get into events that 30 years ago, who was also unemployed, also sold his house. And he said, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, what can we do?" He goes, "I got this idea about the digital transformation of the built world." I said, "Well, that sounds interesting. What is that?" And it's basically said, "Well, banking, insurance, they've gone through that technology transformation, but real estate and construction is really lagging behind. And these are big sectors that really can use that innovation and technology to advance what they're doing." And I said, "Well, that sounds spot on. Let's do it." So we started the company 5 years ago, almost to the day. And here we are. We've got a team of, I've got 30 people behind
Wow.
me. doing 13 events global, not globally, but across Australia in a variety of different sectors of real estate, of which half of the portfolio is now construction, and very proud of the construction events that we do because I think the future of construction, or FCon as it's known, is one of those industry events that is pretty much a must attend if you are a doer. There are other events. There's, obviously big trade shows, but FCon is the execution of strategy. We were at Foundation and Frontiers together, and that is kind of the industry coming together to develop strategy. And then FCon is really who implements those strategies.
Mm,
And that is the level of audience that we get, the C level, but also that layer underneath of
mm,
putting to execution the ideas that the government and the contractors and the owners of the infrastructure want to achieve. And that's what makes FCon so special, getting 800 people together for 2 days to talk about implementing strategy to shift the bar to achieve the future of construction and better outcomes for everybody.
Now, I'd love what you're doing there, and like what a time to consider going into doing events for construction when the world's going into lockdown. I mean, that must have been quite challenging for you as well. So,
Very much, as I said, everyone was losing their jobs. There was no immediate uh, idea of when we could come
mm,
out of lockdown and put on physical events. And when we did our
mm,
first few events, you'll remember, although it was only 5 years ago or less, there was that distancing, social distancing, and so you
mm,
could only fit a certain number of people into a room, and they had to go up single file to get their food, and physical events were at risk of just becoming redundant. And
mm,
most of our events at the start were all virtual.
mm,
And as of next year, we'll be doing no more virtual events. We
yeah,
want to get people together. As much as I do that getting people together to engage, to talk, it's the power of an event.
mm,
There's a lot of impact is created on stage with some of those amazing thought leaders that share. But the real power is also in those interactive roundtables that we run, where we get small groups together to
mm,
talk about what they're doing, and then
mm,
also in the exhibition room. And that was a real challenge at the time of COVID of how
mm.
can we get people to engage with each other? And there was a lot of unknowns, but we've come a long way, and the human race is very resilient. And
Yes.
ironically, as you know, I had COVID last week, just a little poetic reminder of it's still out there, but luckily not as bad as it was all those years ago.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. And it's, like obviously I can appreciate how challenging that would have been at that time and, recognize that you were unwell last week as well with COVID. And what I'd love to understand more is like when you're putting these events together, there's so much work that goes into it. And how do you understand what it is that people actually want to hear to make them want to come to be able to get those 800 people into a room where they know, yes, I'm here for 2 days. I'm going to, carve out these 2 days to come and learn more and connect more, but to make it so it's valuable for them. What's the process involved with being able to do that?
Sure. Well, it's not easy. Otherwise, everyone would do it. And I think
Mm,
a lot of people think it's easy, but when they actually try and do an event themselves, they realize just how much is involved and what they don't know. Or even worse, they don't know what they don't know.
mm,
And when you get to a stage like we have, where everything runs smoothly on the day, there is a lot of work involved. So as I
mm,
mentioned earlier, I've got a team of 30 people and to do 13 events. So that's a lot of people, and you wouldn't necessarily think what are they all doing, but it's not like we're sitting on our hands. So when we come up with an idea, this is an event we're going to do. So for example, we're looking at doing one on new energy transformation because we can see that that's going to be a big part
mm,
of the future. So we then need to research it. And the same is true with FCON or any event we do. We need to do some desk research. We read articles, we read the reports. When I first started in events, there was very rudimentary internet, and I didn't even have email. So we
Yeah.
used to get onto a Reuters machine and read newspaper articles
Yeah.
that on that fish film,
Yes. I
and
know the
that was
sort.
our research.
Yeah.
And I was just given a list of a pad with some names and numbers and a telephone, and you had to call people. So it was very different to how it is today, where the internet or AI can get you so much information literally
Mm.
at your fingertips. You're almost inundated with too much
Mm.
information. But it's good to do that week's worth of desk research so that when you do pick up the phone the next week and you speak to someone, you can start asking them intelligent questions because all
Mm.
these people, whether they're the CEO, the MD, the GM, or a worker at some other level, time is precious. And if they're going to give you their time, you want to be able to ask them intelligent questions, or they will end that call very quickly and think that you don't know what you're talking about.
Mm.
So you do your desk research, you then compound that with conversations. We like to put together an advisory board, so about 10 to 15 industry leaders from a different variety of parts of the industry where we can ask them, look, can I share my draft with you? Can you give me feedback, critical feedback? What's rubbish? What shouldn't I include? Or what's missing? And then
Mm.
beyond that, now that I've got the skeleton of what is a good looking program,
Mm.
who should speak on these topics? Again, as long as you've got one name and one phone number, you should be able to speak to that person. As long as they give you one more name and one more phone number, you can then produce a conference. So
Mm.
we end up making these fantastic events from scratch. And, we don't always get it right, but most of the time we do. We've only ever cancelled one event at Future Place, which I think is pretty good outcome for 1 year. Sorry, for one event in 5 years.
Mm.
And we've got, the producers that are the lifeblood. They put the event together, but then we need a marketing team to get
Mm.
that message out, the audience development team, the sponsorship team, because we can't, they're very expensive to put on events. People don't
Mm.
necessarily realize that. But then we also need the operations team to make
Mm.
sure that the speakers know where they need to be and when, that they organize the AV, the food. Like it's a big, elaborate production. And I'm proud of what we do. And I know that sometimes people, nothing I find more irritating when someone says, oh, I'll only speak at an industry event or a non-for-profit, because I think they do an important job, but they are only one part of the industry. And if you only speak at those events, then you're missing out on speaking and sharing your message with the bigger organizations or the bigger events that aren't for an association or a non-for-profit. So
Mm.
I'm not embarrassed to say that we are a profitable or profit focused business, because we do keep 30 people, 30 families uh, surviving. We do donate to charity, as you would know, because we send that out after every event, the charities that we've supported,
Mm.
etc. And I think that we do an important role in providing must-have information for people that evolves with time. And the
Yeah.
networking that you get, businesses doing uh, finding their clients and engaging with them, or people coming together to network and starting their own little collaboration, whether they're two contractors, or a vendor and a contractor, or a infrastructure provider who's looking to put out a tender. They all come and meet at our events and
Mm.
then do business together.
And that's where it's key as well with what you're doing is because you are like that cog in the wheel where you're bringing all the different stakeholders essentially together to be able to have those conversations and, connect and network and, have some further discussions as well. And, as you know, I've spoken at a number of your events and, the people that I've been able to meet as well has been incredible from, literally just being there and having that presence as well. In the 5 years that you've been doing these construction real estate related events, what's kind of the change that you've seen within the industry over those past 5 years?
Sure. Well, look, I think there's a few. I think it started off with sustainability being a really big focus. Everyone wanted to do things more environmentally friendly and sustainably. And that's come off the boil two reasons. One could be the Trump factor, but the other, I think, is people now know what they need to do to be more sustainable. They don't necessarily need to be told what to do or to attend a conference to learn how to do it. It's somewhat a known quantity. But sustainability was very much a big focus at the start. And as I say, less so now, but probably more because they know now what they need to do. It's still important, but not necessarily a focal point of our
Mm,
conferences, although we'll still always have a roundtable or a panel discussion on that area. Innovation is ever evolving, as
mm.
its name would suggest.
Yeah.
So we always want to have new formats, new ways of delivering important messages to the industry. But how we do that has changed and will always change as will, by definition, innovation is going to be giving us new ways of doing things. But diversity is ever more important. As you mentioned in your opening, as a father of two daughters, I really want to do my part of reducing that gender pay gap, that I think there is no excuse for having that. And we all need to work at that. And when you do events in construction, you have fewer women to involve to begin with. But then when you do an event like FCon Tech and you put that layer of technology above it, you get an already small universe and make it even smaller. So we don't always do what we want to, which is get equality in terms of gender on our programs, but it's not through lack of effort, and we're certainly trying. I remember once there was a lady, I don't think she would mind, she's probably not going to hear this, but Sally Box wrote to me an email complaining that we had a lack of women in our industrial real estate summit. And I called her up and I apologized and I said, I don't know what I can do. I've invited all of these different women. She said, well, I know a lot of those women. And a couple of calls later, we put together a new program which was
Awesome.
much more diverse and did really well. And to this day, we're still working within women in industrial on that. So I'm very proud of the diversity focus that we've seen and having. I think those roundtables, I think, are really important because it's one thing to go to a conference and watch a bunch of talking heads
Mm,
on stage, and it's very important. But it's when those smaller conversations in a smaller group
mm,
happen that real magic can be
mm,
shared. So when you get a room of 200 people and you break them up into 10 groups of 20, led by 20 thought or 10 thought leaders who introduce the theme and talk about it a little, but then say, right, why have you joined my table? What's important to you? What questions do you have? And
mm,
then those group of like-minded people can have it half an hour, 40 minutes to brainstorm solutions to common challenges is where the real magic can happen at an event.
mm.
When I first started in conferencing, we used to have 20-minute coffee breaks, but now we have 40-minute coffee
Yeah.
breaks. So we realize that people want to spend time together and
Mm,
we need to give them more time at our events. And I think we do that more effectively now. So
mm,
structured networking is really a big important thing. And the last thing is we're now investing very heavily in our technology, in our event apps to matchmake and let people who want to find certain profiles
Mm,
connect and find each other in the exhibition, especially at an event like FCon. We've got 800 people running around. It's very hard to find the person that you want. Like I had a couple of people this week who I wanted to meet in a room of 150, and I still didn't manage to find them all because everyone's busy walking around. You see someone, they're talking, you don't want to interrupt. So again, technology is a really evolving great tool that will transform how people attend events and what they can get out of events. So watch this space because we have only just signed off on a new platform that we are transitioning over to. And next year it will be in place for FCon, so you'll be able to see it yourself. And I think that's going to be a game changer. But also just how we market it. People don't really read emails as much as they used to.
mm,
Catching them on the phone is harder. So things like LinkedIn is really important and getting brand ambassadors or champions of FCon like yourself to help us to get our message to the right people. These
mm,
are all changes that are, I think, going to improve the events, as well as the focus of the certain events, like our data centers summit and our child care summit. These are small sector. I mean, of course, childcare is not a small sector,
mm,
I never thought it would be such a big event as it is now. And of course, it's in the news for all the wrong reasons at the
mm,
moment. But our event is not about pedagogy, it's about the real estate and so on. So but we still talk about security, etc.
mm.
And the data, it's such a hot sector. Our first year we did a data center, but we had no data center speaking. Then this year we had 8. Next year we've got 15. So it's
Wow.
starting to really grow because they are inherently secretive. But what we say to people is we don't want you, when you do a case study, you don't have to share your IP. Just start with what were you trying to achieve? What did you implement to achieve the outcomes you wanted? What did you learn from that experience? What would you change moving forward? And then when the tide comes in, everybody will raise as a result. So we want people to share their stories and what they've learned so that others can make fewer mistakes. And as I mentioned, everybody, the whole industry will rise when people
Mm,
are sharing more openly. We're not looking at sharing IP or something that's going to cost you your
mm,
business. That's not why people speak at events. But when people are honest and the more case studies that we can have at our events, the better. And the more panels, like we had over 100 speakers this year at FCon, which is
mm.
quite remarkable. So,
Incredible. That's incredible. And on that, like you're obviously, because you're the producer for FCon as well. So to be able to put a program like that together, the topics, finding the speakers, things like that, with the programs moving forward and the topics that you've seen, what kind of topics would you like us to that they're just not even an issue moving forward, and like things that have been an issue in the industry for a while, and it's like, come on people, like we need to stop talking about this and do something so we're not talking about it year after year at each conference. Is there any particular topics for you that come to mind that you'd like to see that this just isn't even a thing that's spoken about anymore, it's just part of the industry?
sure. Look, I think productivity is one of those very topics that has been at the forefront, as has been diversity and workforce. They're all interrelated. That culture piece is such an important area and challenge within construction. Um, and we've covered it from the first year through to even next year. I would love for it not to be a part of the conference in the future because we don't have a productivity issue, that we do have diverse workforce, that there is sound well-being amongst the workforce, that it's moved to a 5-day week. There is evidence to suggest that construction industry would be more efficient, more productive on a 5-day week. But until the clients are enabling the contractors to do that, often it is them that are creating the problem. And Atlassian is a good example of where they didn't have a budget issue. They wanted sustainability to be at the forefront of the Central Station, Sydney, Atlassian Tower that's going up. And until more clients put sustainability at the forefront, I don't think we will necessarily achieve some of the sustainability goals that we need to by either 2030 or 2050. But as I mentioned, productivity is important. We spoke this week at the Construction Workforce Summit, and I'd like to think that again, in time, that's perhaps not such a big issue.
Mm.
But it is paramount to one of the issues that is holding us back. And I would like, and AI is changing so many things, but I'd like to think that it will change things for the better. I don't know if that's the case. We've all heard the stories, ANZ letting go 10,000 people, Atlassian letting go a lot of people.
Mm.
They are not decisions I'm sure either organization made lightly,
Mm.
but AI, I'm hoping, will create new opportunities and new employment. There is, again, evidence out there that companies that can embrace AI, there will be new roles created for people and not just as a cost saving measure. It's come so far in such a short period of time. We're only just getting a good understanding of how it can improve things, but I don't think we necessarily know what those new jobs are yet.
Mm.
We're just hearing some of the bad stories that are coming out about, job losses, etc.
Mm.
But beyond that, I think certain topics they're always going to be around. Like, I mean, we always have our construction leaders panel and our major projects panel because there's always going to be new
Yeah.
leaders, new projects to be talked about. But those are positive stories. What I want to replace are some of the negative stories, and hopefully we'll find solutions to those challenges and they will become redundant in terms of what we focus on in our events of the future.
Mm, I love that. And you touched on about the AI, and I noticed from FCon 24 to FCon 25 how there was a lot more in the AI space, and even a lot of the exhibitors were, a lot more AI exhibitors and stuff. And that was actually really mind-blowing in itself as well, how that technology has advanced.
100%. I mean, one of the best speakers this year, and there was many, so I don't want to single out, too many individuals, but Hani Arabi, the CIO Hani Arab of CIO of Seymour White, he did a session on
Mm,
how AI technology is going to create productivity in construction. And I thought it was a really fascinating session. And some of those case studies on the tech side of the event really showed how digital tools are creating efficiencies to build faster, safer, more securely, to create, reduce the delays in construction. So these are things that are going to lift the bar. So AI is a big part of that digital transformation that we're
mm,
seeing in construction. We have events like Digital Built World that's all about the AI shaping construction now, as well as our FCon Tech that is really looking at, again, at the innovation, transforming it from different levels of the construction game. So it's a big part of what we do, not just within the construction space, across a whole portfolio of events, but it's one that is just changing so quickly. I was listening
mm,
to the radio today on Kiss FM, and they were putting into an AI, write me a upbeat pop song with a Korean flair that's about a particular person in their team that has a drinking problem and comes to work late, and
Wow.
the lyrics was just so funny, but the beat of the music was so incredible that I think if I was an artist in the music industry, I'd be a little bit worried about my job because these AIs were pumping out songs that were very catchy with lyrics that made sense in within seconds. Yeah, it was amazing. And so I think all of us will be positively impacted by AI, and
Mm,
hopefully, very few of us will be negatively impacted. But it's also a bit scary at just the pace of which
mm.
it's coming on board. And anyone who's as old as we are will know from the Terminator days.
Oh, yes.
Hopefully, there's no Skynet around the in the future with the machines taking over.
I know. But we need to wait and see. Hey, like, none of us really know what's around the corner. The last few years have shown us that, if by anything. So,
I know it's been crazy.
yeah. Now, when you look back on your career history, more than 30 years doing events management, and you've worked in over 30 countries around the world and all the different events that you've been involved in, is there like one event that kind of stands out for you? One that you're really proud of?
Look, to be honest, FCon is my baby.
Yeah.
But I used to run a hedge fund series across about 6 different countries, and that was a lot of fun. And But I find that like events when I did the ESG in real estate or net zero construction or construction workforce, the people that you meet are fundamentally good people.
Yeah.
They're doing it because they want to improve the world. They want to build better, more sustainably, or they want a workforce that's going to be more productive and diverse. When you do hedge fund conferences, you meet a lot of, I don't know if I could say it, but banker wanker or whatever
Yeah.
type. Sorry if that's not the language you want on your
That's all good.
interview, but and it's all about the fear and the greed, and I don't want to miss out, and I want to attend this event because I want to get the head up on my competitors. I want to make more money. Whereas while they're not necessarily the biggest or the most profitable events, those events that focus on important issues like the environment or the workforce, you meet really nice people. And
Mm.
it was quite funny. I also went to an event just last week on hospitality real estate, so all the pubs and whatever. And it was a great show, but trying to get everyone into the room and sit down and behave
Oh,
and
yeah.
start the conference is like herding cats.
Yeah.
Whereas then we did the one like yesterday, everyone's well behaved. They come in, they sit down, and they're very attentive. So every conference is different. But as I said, I've been lucky to have produced events all over the world. And I remember once I went to Mongolia from Dubai, and it was going from one extreme to the other to go from a desert
Oh, yeah.
but it was minus 30 degrees when we were in Ulaanbaatar to meet with the government to do Mongolia Projects event. And that was interesting. I once had to send a producer into Iraq because we were doing an Iraqi conference, an Iraqi projects at the Middle East Economic Digest. And yeah, they would come and speak at the conference in Dubai because we couldn't host it in Iraq, but they wanted you to go and personally invite them to shake their hand, and then they would come and speak. And I said to the producer, I'm sorry, I won't go. You don't have to go, but would you go? And she was brave enough and she went with
Um,
another guy that escorted her. And they had to get like bulletproof vests, go with an armed escort. Some of the things we do. We ran a conference in Libya, and one of the speakers was the Prime Minister. And then the week later, from the same venue we did that, he got kidnapped. So some of these places are, a little bit extreme to say
Yeah.
that it's very safe to do events here in Australia.
Yeah, you're on safe turf now. So
Yeah,
no,
no,
well,
indeed.
well, thank you for sharing that and the experiences that you've had. So in closing, what I'd love to ask you, Leon, if I'd love to hear, which I ask all my guests, you've come with a lot of experience, you've been all around the world, you've done a lot of stuff, you've seen a lot of stuff. And for me, it's about us being good stewards to help pass on our knowledge, essentially, to help the next generation coming in. And particularly with the construction industry, there's obviously, as you've touched on, a lot of focus, with increasing the diversity and productivity and innovation and things like that. If you had someone standing in front of you and there was a piece of advice that you could give them, whether that's someone from industry or government or, someone attending one of your events, to me, it's like about if there was just one thing I could say to someone, and it's like the same thing all the time, what would that be for you to pass on that, you being a good steward and passing on some Leon words of wisdom? What would your words of
Yeah.
wisdom be?
Um, well, I guess I got a few, but I remember my father said to me when I was young, he passed me the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Hmm.
And I've given it to my wife and my daughters. And it's kind of a book that you're almost embarrassed to read because the title, but it's one of the most profound books that's really changed my life in terms of remember people's names and
Mm,
be nice to people and pay them a compliment. If you are a respectful, nice person and you look people in the eyes when you're speaking to them, treat them like how you'd like to be treated, I think it's really powerful what you could get back in return. Because if you are nice to someone, then they'll be nice back. People tend to mirror yourself. Now, not everyone's going to be nice, and not everyone can give you the time of day. Some people are genuinely just too busy.
mm,
But I think perseverance, respect, and listen. That old saying, two ears, one mouth.
yes.
Listen to someone more than what you're saying. That art of being a good conversationalist is ask questions, and that will allow you to be a good producer when you can pull the information and then find out what your customers want and then give it to them. That will help you to be successful, not just as a conference producer, but I think in any industry.
Mm,
And those are my words of wisdom on top of work hard
mm,
because I think, the harder you work, the smarter you work, the more successful you will be. And then in closing, work-life balance, which is one of the messages that I think was importantly conveyed this week and at other events. You know, live, work to live, don't live to work if
mm.
you can, if you're fortunate enough to be in that situation.
And that's the thing. And, you're a business owner and I'm a business owner. And, you've got to have that balance as well because I always say it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So you've got to be sustainable, like you touched on. You've got to be able to be sustainable in your own business as well, but, in life because, we're here for however long we're here for. And, we need to be looking after ourselves along that journey as well. So,
100%. And I think no one is going to be on their deathbed wishing they'd spent more time in the office.
no. Well, Steve Jobs is the example of that, isn't he? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leon, for giving us your time and sharing your valuable insights into the event space for the construction industry because it's definitely an eye opener. It's a part of the industry that a lot of us, yes, we can attend these events, but knowing all the bits and pieces of what's involved in it and your experience has been really valuable and I appreciate you giving us your time.
Angela, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me. When you first reached out, I was like, "Are you sure you want to ask me to be involved?" But if anyone has better understanding of what we do, I mean, we work on projects for 6 months. It's not like it just
Yes.
comes together. So, but if anyone would like to get involved in what we do, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or contact you for my details. I'd love to get the listeners of this interview involved in our events, either on or off stage.
Yes, well, we'll be sharing everything. So they will have all your details to be able to contact you to be able to do that. So thank you so
Fantastic.
much, Leon.
Angela, thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. I hope this conversation gave you something that you can take with you, whether it be a little bit of insight, inspiration, or maybe just a reminder that you're not alone. If it resonated with you, please share because we're better when we help build each other up. And remember that your experience, your story, and your journey, it all matters more than you know. Until next time, stay kind, stay connected, and never forget you are epic.